What's going on, people? We are Tottenham TV, back here for another match preview stream. The international break is a distant memory now. Most of the Premier League teams have played, and it's time to get ready for Tottenham Hotspur tomorrow night. 8 p.m. kickoff under the lights at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. And look who the cat dragged in. Simeon back from LA. How are we doing?
Yeah, I'm glad to be back. Very good timing. Good timing. Spurs to go back top of the league, so I'm ready to be back. I've missed the football. I've missed being on the channel. And yeah, look, I had a great time in LA, met some great people. Saw Arian out there, saw LA Ian out there. I met a great guy called David Park out there as well. So I've had a great time in LA, but now it's back down to business.
Exactly. And like you say, it's another opportunity to go back top of the league this weekend, especially with Arsenal dropping points at Stamford Bridge last night, which I thought Arsenal looked terrible, to be honest, for the majority of that game. But it's a really good opportunity for us to maybe put a bit of daylight between us and Arsenal, or us and the rest of the league, really. If you're looking at the form of the two teams coming into it, you're looking at Fulham. They're sitting in 13th in the league this season so far. It's probably a good kind of indication of where they're at, Fulham, because I don't think they've been probably any worse than that. They've not been any better than that. It's a good representative of how good they've been this season, isn't it?
I think, if anything, they've probably got a bit of an overperformance, because I think there are some games so far this season, like, for example, Luton at home, they won 1-0, where they probably shouldn't have even won that game. I think Sheffield United, the last game they had, there was a big slice of luck in them winning that game as well, albeit on balance of play maybe deserved it, but the goal they scored to take the lead was at 1-1 late in the game was a big slice of luck. I think Fulham are struggling, in my opinion, and they've been getting some results. They got a really good draw at the Emirates 2-2 with 10 men, so it shows they've still got a bit of resilience about them. They're not going to be an easy team to play against, but when you're looking at that 11, there's especially without Mitrovic now, there's just a massive lack of quality in that forward line, and I think that's going to hold them back.
Yeah, look, I can't really disagree with that too much. And when you're kind of assessing them from last season to this season, what they did really well last season was get the ball out to wide areas and flood the box with Mitrovic in the middle there. I think they were like second in terms of the whole Premier League last season for crosses last season. And with Mitrovic there, they had someone to deliver it to. This season, they're not getting anywhere near as many crosses in. I'm not sure what the reason. Maybe Willian is not performing. Maybe what he was last season. Andreas Pereira as well. But on top of that, they don't have that kind of man like Mitrovic in the middle there, with Raul Jimenez there instead of him. You're thinking, well, it's a massive downgrade going from Mitrovic to Raul Jimenez, and they probably need to look at another number 9 in January, or potentially, if it's the end of the season, it could be a bit too late for them. I don't think they're bad enough to go down, but in terms of what they were so good at last season, they haven't seemed to replicate that this season. I
think what's saving them at the moment is just the form of Burnley, Bournemouth, Sheffield United. They're really struggling for any sort of ability to get to kind of muster results, whereas Fulham have been getting results here and there, albeit the only 3 wins they've had this season are Luton at home 1-0, last week against Sheffield United at home 3-1, and then the first day of the season they beat Everton 1-0, where Leno was man of the match, and they were very lucky to win that game. So I think they could definitely be dragged into a relegation battle, in my opinion, if they don't improve things drastically. There's just nowhere where you look at the team where you're seeing where the goals are coming from. The only thing they're relying on is maybe kind of Wilson can pull something out the bag. Joao Palhinha can keep them in games with their solid defensive structure, and then maybe kind of snatch a goal down the other end, maybe even against a run player from a set piece, and then just hold out for a result. That's pretty much, it seems, how they've been getting results so far this season. I don't think they're too good to go down. I think the only thing that maybe could save them is that there are probably 3 worse teams in terms of on paper and even on the pitch right now. So I think that can save them. But if the other teams improve, I can really see Fulham being dragged into it, because I don't see Fulham improving massively.
I do kind of think, though, like, if January comes and they can get a striker through the door, then that can put a bit of daylight between them and the likes of Luton, Sheffield United, Bournemouth, even Burnley. And I rate Marco Silva as a manager. I think he's a good manager, but I just feel like the club haven't done him any favours with the transfer business that they've done during the summer, which is the reality of the situation. But I do think those 4 clubs that I've mentioned have been worse for Fulham, and maybe apart from Burnley, you can't. Luton are improving, to be fair. They are improving. They're starting to get points on the board. I guess it's a bit too early for this kind of conversation. But when you're looking at the head-to-head between Spurs and Fulham, it's quite favourably in the favour of Tottenham. We have won 4 of our last 5 games against them, with 1 draw coming in 2021. We do have a bit of revenge though to talk about, because they did knock us out the cup earlier on this season when Ange made 9 changes to the team. It's going to be a completely different game this time, with Spurs going for their strongest lineup. But last season, if you cast your mind back to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium when we won 2-1 with Hojbjerg scoring, putting us 1-0 up, I think, in the first half. Hojbjerg is going to be very important for this game as well. He is going to be coming in for the suspended Yves Bissouma. And what kind of difference do you think that will bring to the team?
Well, we're not going to have that ability to as easily break through the middle third with amazing ball carrying ability that Bissouma's been bringing us. I think when it comes to defensively and it comes to how we're able to stop Fulham, I'm not too worried about that. I think we should have the capabilities to easily dominate the midfield battle even without Bissouma. But what Bissouma has been, why he's been so effective this season, is he's been a bit of a cheat code both on and off the ball. So he's got one of the highest numbers in the league for tackles and interceptions per 90 in the league. So it shows that defensively he's been extremely difficult to get past when he's on the pitch. But he also is in the upper echelons when it comes to progressive passes and ball carrying ability in the middle third. So he basically gives us a full package when it comes to a defensive midfield in that position, and it means that we have the ball carrying ability as well as the defensive ability. Now with Hojbjerg in there, I think passing wise, progressive passes, I think he's pretty good. I think he can do that job. But when it comes to getting the ball and taking people on and just breaking the midfield through his sheer ability to break the lines through ball carrying ability, he doesn't have that in his locker. So we're going to have to find different solutions to basically finding the spaces in midfield and progressing the ball forward into their final third. We saw when we played Fulham away without Bissouma, that was something we definitely struggled with when it came from playing out the back and progressing the ball forward into the final third. We really struggled just to get into the attacking positions, especially in the first half. I mean, second half we improved a bit, but first half we definitely struggled. And Joao Palhinha is nothing to be sniffed at when it comes to playing against someone like him. He is a very good midfielder. So he's, even by himself, he is so difficult to get past. So we're going to lose a bit, but I think even with that loss of Bissouma, that we should have enough in that midfield to be able to compensate with that, with just better passing ability, moving the ball maybe a bit quicker. Maybe Maddison drops a bit deep and he can be the link between the defense and attack, and he can be the one who does the ball carrying ability instead of Bissouma. So we have options, but we definitely lose a bit with Bissouma not being there.
Would you like to see, I know we are going to see Hojbjerg drop down to that 6, but would you potentially like to see maybe even Pape Matar dropping down to that 6 and Hojbjerg playing a bit more advanced? Because that's how he likes it with Denmark. Yeah,
it's just a question of Sarr defensively. Will he be able to patrol that in that number 6 area as well as Hojbjerg could? Do we trust him enough to play that lone 6 role in a 4-3-3? Maybe he wants someone a bit older, a bit more experienced in that role. There's nothing maybe to suggest how Sarr plays that he couldn't do it. We've seen like this season he's obviously been unbelievable off the ball with his ability to cover every blade of grass and his ability to get back in position and make the challenges. But it's been from a more of a position where he's always got the cover to help him, and if he's the cover, then it might be a different situation. So he's always gone for Hojbjerg in the 6 when given the opportunity, and I expect that to happen again. I do think personally that Hojbjerg would probably be himself better in number 8 position than in the number 6, but when it comes to him or Sarr, I think it probably makes a bit more sense just to go with Hojbjerg.
I'd like to see it though. I'd like to see him try the Sarr in the number 6 and Hojbjerg to be that a bit more advanced, because I do think as well that maybe Hojbjerg, in terms of his progressive passing from those areas of the pitch, is probably a bit better and to a higher standard than Pape at the moment.
I agree with that, to be honest. I think he's probably, but that might be even more reason to have him in the 6 in a way.
Point. Yeah, it's a fair point, because we do need that kind of, because that kind of number 6 role in the Ange system needs that, doesn't it? So yeah, look, I guess you can argue both cases for which way you want to go, but I think for all argument's sake, it will be Hojbjerg probably in that number 6. Because Ange said in his press conference, like, Hojbjerg is just a natural replacement, and we've got a ready-made replacement for Bissouma and Pierre. So I think that tells you everything you need to know for the game on Monday night. But in terms of this predicted lineup for Fulham, The standout player there is obviously Joao Palhinha in the middle of the park. Do you think that Hojbjerg is going to run into a few problems with him there? Because last season he was absolutely outstanding, and he got the links with Bayern Munich, which he nearly joined in the summer. Obviously, that didn't materialise and it fell apart in the last minute. But he's kind of like the odd one out in that Fulham team at the moment. He's seems to me like the only one with only some proper real quality there.
Yeah, he's absolutely fantastic, Palhinha, and I would have said he's underrated, but he nearly moved to Bayern in the summer. I think people are starting to realise how effective a midfielder he has been for Fulham, and he's, I think, a big part of the reason last season why they did so well. And we saw this season earlier on when he wasn't in the team, they were struggling. He came back in, and things improved fairly significantly from a defensive point of view, and he just gives you everything. He's amazing off the ball. He covers so much ground. He's so strong. He's so hard to get past on the ball. I wouldn't say he's an amazing ball carrier, but he's got quality. He can definitely play. He's a very good passer. He's got very good positional awareness as well. He's a top 6 midfielder, no doubt about it.
Emirates as well this season.
Scored at the Emirates to make it 2-2. He's a top 6 midfielder, no doubt about it. There's a reason why Bayern Munich were after him. I really believe he could play at any of the clubs in the upper echelons of the Premier League. He's that good, and he's a proper professional as well. He hasn't even though all the speculation about Bayern and a failed move could have definitely affected a lot of players, it hasn't let him affect him. And I think he's been absolutely a top professional. He's doing a top job for Fulham, and he's going to be the biggest problem when it comes to deal with them. Even though obviously he's not an attacking player, defensively he's like an extra player almost with how he is able to cover that midfield. So I wouldn't say Hojbjerg necessarily. I think it's more whether Maddison can wriggle away from him and get that space, because if he can, I can see him causing a lot of damage. But if Palhinha has him on lockdown, it's going to be a lot more difficult to create the level of chances that we hope to.
Why is it so hard to beat this Fulham team when they're playing away from home? They've only lost one game so far away from home this season. That was a heavy defeat to Manchester City. But they've gone to Crystal Palace and taken a point. They've gone to Arsenal and taken a point. They've beaten Everton at Goodison as well, a 1-0 win. What is it about this Fulham team? Why are they not losing that many games away from home with kind of what we're saying about them not being good enough?
I think that will turn, in my opinion. I think there's probably a bit of an element of luck in a few, especially I thought the Arsenal game, they were very lucky to get a point. I know that you got to give them credit because 10 men is never easy, and they were 2-1 down with 10 men as well, and they're able to get a point. But the chances Arsenal missed, they definitely should have won that game. The Palace game, Palace is struggling right now with their front line. Everton, Leno was man of the match. They got extremely lucky in that game to get all 3 points. Even 1 point, they would have been lucky, but 3 points was very lucky. So I think, but on the flip side, I don't want to completely say that all the results are luck, because I think they're a fairly solid defensive team, and they're very hard to break down, and they don't really concede. Apart from obviously when they're playing the bit better teams, they don't concede like massive amounts of chances. They've got good players in defensive areas, and people like Joao Palhinha as well. And obviously away from home, naturally you're going to be a bit more defensive, especially if you're a team like Fulham. A point away from home is usually, regardless of who it is, more often than not, a point away from home is a good result. So they usually set up quite defensive, and that probably suits them playing on the counter-attack in that essence. And they are quite hard to break down. So it's not going to be easy. I think that's probably why they had a bit more joy away from home, because maybe at home they open up a bit and they don't really have that attacking talent to make full advantage of the opportunities when they're opening up a bit, and they're leaving themselves a bit more open defensively, and then they end up getting caught out. So I think they're a bit harder to play probably at the moment away from home, but I think at the moment from the games I've assessed them away from home, I think there's been a huge slice of luck for the amount of points they've been able to accumulate, and I don't think that's sustainable.
We have seen Spurs struggle a couple of times this season trying to break down low blocks. I know that we should have scored many, like 2 or 3, maybe even 4 in the opening stages against Luton, but essentially we didn't score, and we struggled to break them down at times, and we ended up getting a 1-0 win from a set piece. Sheffield United at home, we left it really late until the last seconds of the game to go and win that game. We struggled to break them down at times. Do you feel like it's going to be a similar game here with Fulham coming and setting up a low block and maybe trying to mark Sonny out the game?
Yeah, it could do. I think they're definitely, again, very similar to the game against Sheffield United and Luton. We had chances early in those games to take the lead, and we didn't take them. And all of a sudden, it becomes a slog and becomes a lot more difficult when you don't take those early chances, especially against teams who are coming to the Tottenham Stadium looking to frustrate us and looking to restrict us from creating as many chances. It's so important in these games that you come out flying out the traps and try and get that early goal to open the game up. And we could have done that in those games, and we just weren't able to finish the chances.
That was the fastest we've come out of traps this season against Luton. I mean, we were on fire in those first 10, 20 minutes, and we just couldn't find the back of the net.
So I wouldn't say it's a case of us struggling per se. I think it's more of a case of you just got to make sure that when we create those chances early on, once the defence are a bit unsettled, they got to settle into the game. If you can just take one or two of those chances, all of a sudden it's a different picture. If we come out like we did against Luton, I'm confident we'll score one of those opportunities if we do the same. So I think, but if we don't, and then we let their defence settle into their shape, and all of a sudden it becomes a struggle to break them down, then it becomes a different game. So I think it's vitally important that we can take one of those early opportunities. We've got the players to do it. We've got the quality to do it. We've got the momentum. We're in a very good way at the moment. So even though, like, if you remember the Carabao Cup game, yeah, we struggled in that game to break them down and create chances, but I wasn't even over impressed with Fulham in that game. The goal they scored was an own goal, which was a bit of a fluke. Other than that, they didn't create too many great opportunities. Even then, we took them to penalties, even with a second string team. Even late in that game, we could have won the game as well. So, and that's again, that was with a team who wasn't very fluid, who wasn't able to free-flowingly create chances like hopefully a more solid team that we're going to put out against Fulham on Monday should do. So I definitely see it not being the easiest of games if in the first half we're struggling to create opportunities. But if we can really come flying out the blocks and take a chance early, I see it being a lot more easy to manage.
Is this a massive game now? Is this like a much bigger game now because Arsenal dropped points yesterday?
I'm not looking at that, to be honest. Obviously, it'd be nice to go back top of the league. What I'm more interested in, to be honest, is if we win, we go 7 points clear of fifth. That is what I'm more interested in when I'm looking at, because that's a significant gap. To go 2 points ahead of Arsenal now is not significant. That can change in a week.
But to be fair, they go Newcastle away in a couple of weeks.
Who? Newcastle? Who? Arsenal. Doesn't matter. It's too early. It's too small a gap to be talking about.
Gap's got to be made from somewhere, though.
Yeah, I know, but and technically, if we win this and then beat Palace on Friday, we can go 5 points clear at the top without anyone playing again. So that would be nice. Don't get me wrong, and that puts us in a strong position. But in terms of things that we could that I'm looking at the table and thinking, what can really be done right now that is actually significant, I think going 7 points clear of fifth place and really putting a bit of daylight between us and the rest of the chasing pack in top four, that would be significant at this stage, especially with those teams having European football, and there definitely will be more drop points coming, even against teams you don't expect. There'll be more drop points coming from those teams. I think we can create a buffer as early as possible, a big gap, so that later in the season, we could have
before this international break. If we can get maximum points or as many as we can get before this next international break, after the international break comes, we've got a string of really hard fixtures. So we need to put ourselves with that buffer for that period, because there's no doubt about it, we're going to drop points over that period. We can't not.
Yeah. So I think everyone's going to drop points, and especially us as well. I'm sure there'll be times where we're going to drop points. So I think if we can have that 7 point buffer, and that could be 10 points with a winner against Palace on Friday, all of a sudden, in a week's time, we could be 10 points clear of fifth place. And considering where nothing's guaranteed when it comes to top four, and you've got to fight for every point, and yes, we've had a great start, but does by no means that mean we're guaranteed to be in that top four. I'm not looking at Arsenal, Liverpool, City, and creating a big points gap between them, because that's going to change a lot especially with the small points difference. That can change within a week with one bad result. All three of them win, all somewhere in fourth place. But if we could have a 10-point gap or a 7-point gap between us and fifth place, I think that puts us in an extremely strong position when it comes to getting in that top four come the end of the season.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even now, even early on.
So you think even now you're looking at the league table in terms of the top four and stuff, or do you take it even more seriously maybe when the games come thick and fast in December?
Yeah, obviously it's still very early on. We're not even 10 games in, so you can't make too many sweeping conclusions. But if you can create a 7-point gap after 9 games, that's significant. That is a significant gap, and that would tell me as well that could potentially get bigger before if we can keep up the good form and we can keep getting consistent results. That gap I don't see getting too much smaller between now and December, potentially for the next month or so. So that's why this game on Monday is so important, that we get all 3 points, because it sets us up in such a good position when it comes to achieving what we want to achieve come the end of the season.
And the last thing I just want to talk about is probably the only contentious spot to talk about in the team on Monday night, which is the left wing. Brennan Johnson is back. Richarlison, if you cast your mind back to last year Fulham at home, I think that's when he made his debut, his first start for Spurs, playing off, I think, was he the right wing or the left wing? I can't remember which wing he played off, but I think it was one of his better games for Spurs that day. He famously took his shirt off for a goal that was disallowed. He hit the post and he was causing a nuisance for himself. And with the way Fulham played, do you think it's more suited to a Richarlison than a Brennan?
Probably. Obviously, Brennan has showed a lot in his cameos so far, and he is coming back from injury. And got
even Brian Hill, didn't even mention Brian.
Yeah, Brian Hill, who's looking. I was looking at the training videos. He's looking fairly sharp, so maybe he's one who potentially. I think Ange obviously will make the decision based on who he thinks is looking the best right now and who he thinks deserves a spot. But if I'm just doing this based on previous performances and who I think should keep his spot, I think Richarlison, last couple games, yes, he missed some good chances against Luton, and he'll be very disappointed with that. Against Liverpool the week before, I thought he had a pretty good game, and he's starting to improve on the left wing. And I thought he was unlucky against Luton. The fact that we went down to 10 men just before half time, and he was the unlucky one to be hooked at the break. Whereas if he stayed on, and if he maybe got another opportunity in that second half, maybe he would have taken it. So I think he's been improving. I don't want to. I think there's no big reason to drop him unless he really believes that Brennan's being a lot better than him in training right now. I think based on performance, I would like to see Richarlison carry on. I think if he can get the chances he got against Fulham, I back him to put one of them away in this one.
Yeah, it's an interesting one with Richarlison, because since the last international break, the end of it, it's been like a kind of upward trajectory for Richarlison in terms of performances. And I felt like it was a bit of a step backwards after that Luton game, and he would probably be frustrated that the international break came after that Luton game, so he probably wanted another Spurs game straight away to kind of put that right. But I guess it's his opportunity to put it right this weekend. He's got previous for performing well against Fulham, and let's hope that he can have another good performance. But that's our match preview for the Fulham game tomorrow night, 8 o'clock kickoff. Sim will be in the stadium at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium tomorrow, and in the studio you've got Josh King and Marlon for the watch along, so come and join them and get their insights of the game.
2-0. I think that even though no Bissouma is definitely going to have an impact, I don't think it'll have too much of a significant impact. That the decrease in performance should mean that we're struggling too much to create chances. I think Fulham right now, I'm just looking at their front line. I'm looking at their team. I'm like, I don't see where they're massively going to hurt us unless they get a goal, like, a lucky goal from a deflection or a set piece or something like that. I don't see too many avenues where I'm too worried about them. And I think even without Bissouma, we should have enough to progress the ball to the final third, enough in the game to create the opportunities to win the game. And I think we should have the quality. So I'm going for a 2-0 win for Spurs.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same. I think when you're looking at Fulham this season, they're not great on the eye, let's be honest, and I think they've lost a lot in terms of with Mitrovic going. Their play from the wide areas isn't as strong as it was last season, so they're not getting as many crosses in the box, even for players like Carlos Vinicius and Raul Jimenez to get on the end of them, even though it's a massive drop off from Mitrovic anyway. So I think they have lost a lot in terms of what their strong attributes were and why they were so dangerous last season. So I think Spurs will win this game, but I think without Bissouma there and with Hojbjerg there, we also lose quite a bit in the middle of the park. So it'll be a tough game, but I think if we can get an early goal, I think we can go on to win this game quite convincingly, with Fulham probably being forced to come out more than they wanted to. So I'm also going to go 2-0. I think it'd be quite nervy at times.
I think one player we didn't mention though, who I actually think has been their best player of the season, is Leno. I think Leno's probably been their best player of the season, and we know that
he was top last season as well.
Yeah, and I think this season he's been spectacular for a lot of the time. A lot of the time they're getting results because of him. And we know Spurs have form of coming up against keepers in inspired form, and especially him, former Arsenal keeper as well. So that's definitely something to look at.
Yeah, 100%. I couldn't agree more. I think Leno is definitely. It's like I said before, like Palhinha is the only one with real quality, but I actually think Leno's got some quality to him as well. He's definitely one of the top keepers in the league, in my opinion.
On form, I think.
Yeah. So anyway, that is our match preview. Let me know your score predictions and let me know how you think the game is going to go in the comment section below.